We're already recording but we will go back to recording.
So about the silence.
Yeah, start with the silence and then we'll fill it up. Well,
The silence is somehow, how to say, the philosopher Michel Foucault said that with his all best friends, he could be silent with them, so that it is a kind of blizus, of proximity.
like the mic, you need to have better proximity of the mic to your mouth.
Okay, so the silence is kind of proximity that only very close people could experience silence between them.
Can you? I came up with a new term, which is Godo sapiens versus Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens versus
Godo sapiens.
Godo sapiens.
That's-
Godo sapiens, yes.
What does it mean? Anything to you?
Yes, Godo sapiens is a kind of waiting, a kind of attempt to produce something in this empty time, in this empty time of waiting.
Is emptiness void of structure? Is there a structure in emptiness, in silence, in void?
Maybe not structure, this is some kind of a void, but this void could be full with meaning, but the void, I think that the void is not a structure.
Okay, so the void waits for insemination. Is the void nature?
I can't answer this question. This is too hard for me.
Closer,
It's just-
closer to your mouth. Speak closer.
Okay, I can't answer this question. This is too difficult.
Good.
That's all I can say.
Can you? Well, you can answer the question: is there a structure to the silence?
Is there a structure to the silence? This is a question that was asked everyone.
No.
Everyone was
No, we're just
Is there a
rotating.
structure to the silence? Of course, there is a structure to everything, depending on. But it depends on who is talking about silence, or who is asking the question.
So
I have to focus.
you have to focus.
So make me focus.
I'll focus you. It's like silence is filled with what? With speech or language, or what?
Can it be empty?
Silence.
Yeah.
It's no longer empty.
You're talking to me as if I have to finish your sentence, and you're
Yeah, of
expecting
course.
me
That's the rule of the
to
game.
finish it the way how you want me to
Of
finish
course, that's the rule of the game. Okay, we'll go back to that later. Tell me, what is your name?
Vera,
What does it mean in English?
it means truth.
Or faith? Viara?
Isn't it the same?
I don't know. Can you feel silence with faith or truth?
Can we hear the silence now?
Well, okay, some people say silence this is the voices of the silenced, of the colonized, of the repressed, of the oppressed. It could be.
It could be, but I have never heard the silence.
That's interesting. Well, remember that. Tell me, what tools do you use to fill up the silence?
Like my ears.
No, not to appreciate it, to hear it. To feel it, sorry, to feel it.
My
Can you
whole
use language?
body.
Can you use words?
No, I can only use my senses and my body.
To feel the silence?
Yes.
Try it with the mic. Yeah, good. Oh, okay, difficult. So we go to our new circle member, Elena. You are almost a baby artist.
Yes.
When did you hear of Beuys first? There was a silence, Beuys silence, before you heard about Beuys. How did you come to learn about Beuys?
An artist that was my teacher.
Closer.
An artist that was my teacher in school was explaining to me his works and citing
Was
Beuys.
that in Bulgaria?
Yeah.
Was that like recent?
No, that was probably 8 years ago.
8 years ago. This is
Yes.
ancient history. And what did he say about boys?
He was trying to explain to me why his approach to his work is as brutal as I saw it to be, because he was painting and illustrating these very brutal scenes of like dead bodies. Or
What else do you know about boys? Not girls, boys.
I know he's a very remarkable post-war artist.
Why?
Why? In terms of biography, or why?
Any political implications? In your drawings, you make drawings of a lot of people together, migrants in camps, or just people from protests. Does that relate somehow to Beuys' notion of social sculpture, let's say?
I think Beuys was really trying to imagine how society would be able to function better, more sustainably, more fruitfully. And that's things I like to think about.
Okay, so we have a next, Krassimir Terziev, who's joined us. Krasi, tell us, is social media producing identity, or is it contributing to the political process this way or in any other way?
I'm not sure. There were different phases of social media. In the beginning, we believed that the Arab Spring was inspired by social media, but recently we faced also the Cambridge Analytica scandals, and definitely it influences the political process, but we are not sure if it's in a positive way as we were sure maybe 5-6 years ago.
Okay, but I've heard that politicians, especially in Bulgaria, number one thing they do in the morning when they check into the office or switch on their computers, they go online and they check what's written about them on Facebook. And then they have to accordingly produce their policies for the day.
Then we could
not
say
for eternity, not for the next 5 years, for the day.
Then we could say that Facebook creates identities.
For politicians?
For politicians.
Isn't that great power?
Yes, of course, and that's why it's used and misused in a variety of ways.
I'll take your mic and I'll go to Alex. Can you tell me which one is better, to post on Facebook or to vote in general elections? What is more politically relevant?
I think it's both. It's important to vote. It's important that you somehow try to influence is wrong term. It's also saying Facebook, it's just a certain generation, I believe, because the younger generation, they don't use actually Facebook, they don't have it, and I don't think then you're doing so much. So I would say voting is more important.
Define younger generation. How young is young?
10, 16, then next
they
would be
don't vote
16.
anyways.
Yeah, but they will be voting in few years, and they should start to think about it, because I met young people who were 17, they would vote next year, and they didn't know even what is the function of parliament, what does it do, and what could it change in the world.
The parliament or their vote? Or both. Boryana, why do you hate Beuys?
I didn't hear.
Why do you hate Beuys?
Why are you sticking this into my mouth?
Because we need the recording. We're making a podcast.
Okay, I can hold it myself.
Okay. So
You're almost raping me with this.
that's what I wanted to hear.
That's why I hate Beuys.
Can you tell us about...
I don't hate, can I say? I don't hate Beuys. Why did you say I hate Beuys? I just didn't like the microphone being stuck into my nose.
You didn't like the performative aspect of the
I
podcast.
just reacted that way. But this is the way how I feel. Regarding Beuys, I wouldn't say that I hate him. I am critical to him. So, but I'm critical not to him, but to some of his ideas.
Which one, for instance?
Direct democracy.
Why?
Well, because I guess I have different political views. and it's just basic.
So you don't think
It's so basic.
So you don't think that social networks or social media, especially Facebook and stuff like that, is in any way like a replica or a continuation or development on his notion of social sculpture and then direct democracy?
Yeah, well, it reproduces certain type of direct democracy. It looks like this. I'm not necessarily convinced that this is what he meant by what he's doing. And also, I think when we talk about Facebook, it's one thing. When we talk about art in the notion that Beuys was using it in terms of everybody can be an artist and every activity, human activity, can be artistic and forming this social sculpture. I think Facebook kind of differs from this because it seems to be a representation of direct democracy. It is not because there is a lot of censoring and reading and regrouping and stuff like this. So I'm not entirely sure that there is a direct parallel there, but I understand what you meant by this.
Oh, okay. So, Miryana, tell me about the difference. How do you see this? So, on Facebook we have bubbles. They are defined by language, by friend groups. How, in your view, they are similar or different to communities in normal life?
Communities
Communities of people.
Communities are harder to build. You can just post something, you can just write it, it's uploaded in like a second. Communities take harder, it creates an effort.
But isn't
You have
it
to
like
put time into it, you have to make people gather, you have to build things, you have to make things happen, you have to make people stay, you have to evaluate time. Facebook is accessible, it's just, you just put it out there. It's a way of showcasing something. It's an idea that is just visible to a lot of people. It's an image that is viewable. It's a text that's added.
But isn't it true that in 2013, because of a Facebook post in June 2013, a huge, massive period of street demonstrations started in Bulgaria because of a single post on Facebook?
People respond to an impulse.
Political appointment.
People respond to an impulse. It could be another social media too. But it's something that it's been grounding and
But isn't it that
it's out there. So
Facebook
Facebook
bubble,
provokes it.
A Facebook bubble exists in a way as a community because you wouldn't be part of the bubble unless you speak the language of the bubble, you have friends in the bubble. So in some
this
way
is chat. This is talking. This is conversation. It's exchanging ideas. Facebook itself, it's like a platform. It's a window.
Does it have a structure?
It's information.
And
But it's the time you spent in it.
Is it social structure that it has?
Of course. It's a social structure that already operates us, and we operate it. That's the good part about it. It's in two ways. We can manipulate it, but it manipulates us as well.
Krasi, do you know about the oaks and the basalt stones of Joseph Beuys? So, they say that it's very difficult to translate the German terminology into another language, but I thought that this urban planting versus urban planning is kind of could be used for at least for this occasion. So, in your view, how do you trigger a process of critique, let's say, of the urban planning in this city using Facebook? I mean, this is something we have been witnessing and we have been part of, but is this a tool? Is this a valid kind of context for application of Beuys's ideas?
Of course, but it's just maybe it's just the start of what he meant as a social sculpture, because social sculpture, at least the way I understood it, implies that there is a forming, there's a form, and in social media it's a formless thing. It's a lightnings that exchange their directions, and it could be a good start for a conversation, but then it requires a lot more actions and continuity in order to become a form, to become a sculpture.
So a form in this way only is valid if it has some sort of application and visibility. Otherwise, it's just a thought or an exchange, a chat.
It's valid if it builds on top of opinions and transforms social energies and reaches to a kind of crystallization of these energies into a new state of, I don't know, in this case, urban planning.
Urban planning. Boryana, tell me, have you been vaccinated for COVID-19? What? I'm gonna stick it in your mouth, please.
Yes, I have been vaccinated.
What kind of vaccine? Your team what? Team Pfizer, team Moderna, team Astra?
Can I ask another question? Why are you asking Krasi all these complicated questions and you ask me why you hate boys? Are you vaccinated? You're sticking this into my mouth. It's just like, is this direct democracy? Seriously, are you the one who puts the rules for the direct democracy?
In your view, how effective was Beuys, preferably in the context of current use of Facebook, in treating collective trauma, guilt, on the level of individual cure? And that would be related to the question of hate.
How effective was Beuys?
In curing collective trauma,
Yeah, I'm not entirely
as opposed to individual cure, or, in
collective
partnership.
I actually don't know, because I'm not necessarily sure that I have really observed the results of what he's doing. But I think, thinking about the 7,000 orcs, for instance, this is something which is, of course, curing, and there's something very specific. There is oxygen, and there is a plant. There is something that becomes part of a cycle of the whole planet and society, and at the same time there is something symbolic, which are these the stones that are put next to the trees. So I think in terms of participation in this specific thing, if people who participated in it, they understood the symbolics behind this, I'm sure that they have experienced certain kind of healing, certain kind of overcoming trauma to a big extent. I'm not entirely sure about the whole planet and the whole even German society, but for this specific thing, yeah, probably yes. People who participate in art, they go through catharsis somehow, and then they are probably healed.
You're one of the most visible Bulgarian-born artists who are also teachers in a highly visible university and a very advanced program in upstate New York. Was it Syracuse University? So you have a direct link, like experience of teaching. Can you tell me, I mean, I have formulated a short question, like Blackboard is better for lecturing and curing, or Facebook wall is better?
Yeah, I was thinking when I read your description and intro for us, that it is based on binaries, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of binaries, because then I have only two choices. But if I have to stick to this, I would choose one and the other, and then the one and then the other, and the blackboard, and then whatever it is. So there should be dialectic.
So if there are a number of binaries to choose from, does that make your choice more or less, more expanded or reduced?
I also don't believe in binaries. So
no, but you have like n number of binaries, not just one or two. I didn't say you have to pick a binary to respond to. You can pick several binaries, and you can pick your answers.
Yes, but I think that every binary could add another thing to this binary. You could add a third thing. So this is why I don't believe in binaries. Anyway, even though these binaries are a multitude. So I think every time you have a third option.
Okay, the option now is shaman. The third option is the shaman, who is performative, magical, ritualistic, no binaries. He makes bridges. Beuys was a shaman in a way. He made bridges between culture and nature, politics and individual,
yes, but I
social
think that every
and
binary
thinking.
is a kind of a simplification.
Yeah, but how do you bridge
more
that
complex problem?
You can, but they are there. How do you bridge them?
By deconstructing it.
By
deconstructing them.
Okay.
I think this is
So deconstruct the living, the coyote from the oak.
Yes, just
Which one would you choose?
the oak.
Me too. Okay. Why don't you choose the coyote?
I choose the coyote.
Yeah.
Of course,
Why?
because it's leadership. I think we need more leadership. And the oak is nature. It's there. We have to take care of nature.
Who dies
But
first?
we shouldn't be oaks ourselves. We should be more coyote.
What is the sound of an oak growing up? Stronger, harder. No, that's the coyote growing up.
Coyote growing up.
Yeah, I want to hear an oak growing up. Give me this. I want to ask a question of our young colleague, but I cannot think of a question. Tell me, why at all deal with older artists now, like Beuys? I mean, is there anything that in your mind that something that happened like 50 years ago that might have applications today? And what would be the bridge between then and now?
I sit here and wonder why we deal with older artists now, and it makes me wonder which of those things that are made today will be dealt with in the future. And
Once Beuys said that he's representing the voices of the animals and the flora and the fauna, those creatures, organisms that do not have a voice. Would that be in any ways relevant in the future, in the context of Anthropocene, in the context of this kind of a catastrophe, or even in the context of human versus virus, duality? I tried with human and virus and vaccine, but it was not good enough. So
I particularly like the whole concept behind the Beuys' work with the oaks, because it actually, instead of having this individual who kind of advocates the voiceless, or as you said, he proposes to the public to do so themselves.
okay. Well, recently I saw one oak which has been motionless for 40 years, but then there was a basalt stone that went with it. It was brought to Denmark by René Bloch, and this basalt stone was the most traveled stone ever, because it went from the quarry where it was taken from near Kassel, then it was positioned in front of the Frederiциanum in 82, then it was taken by René Bloch to his house in Denmark, and then it was taken to Sydney to be exhibited somewhere there, and then he didn't like it, took it back to Denmark, and then when the leadership of a biennial in Sydney changed, he just sent it back to Sydney. So this basalt stone has traveled several times across the world, and it's not clear why do we have to care about the stone? Is it just a trigger for the planting of the oak? Or is it just, like a fundraising device? And how many of these stones? I've seen a lot of them in Kassel next to oak trees. They've been planted all around the town. But I'm not sure how this kind of notion can be represented now in an exhibition, so I want to ask a curator here. You're curating a show about Beuys in Bulgaria at the end of the year. What's your leading idea? Maybe two.
Well, first of all, Beuys fundraised this project himself, so he even took a part in advertisements in order to get money for his project. And I think now the stones are they stay the same, but the oak is growing and it's changing, and it's probably something about that. And it's something about like a landmark of his project. But now I think maybe we should announce all of the trees all over the world that they are planted by Joseph Beuys, so maybe people will stop cutting trees, or I don't know, if we need to change something about it, it's beyond the Beuys project about the oaks.
Krassi, you've been dealing with speculative realism lately. So originally, traditionally, the artistic mythology says that the artworks are more important than the artist because they outlast the artist. But in Beuys's works, the artist is so very much so important. So what is the missing element that we could supplement now to these works, if we want to reactivate them, if we want to use them again? One possibility is to think of social sculpture in different ways. That's what we are trying now. But are there any other possibilities?
Difficult. Well, I don't know. That was my one of my difficulties with facing encountering a work of Beuys, because I'm helpless. At least in the first years when I saw his rooms in Hamburger Bahnhof, I was helpless and I couldn't orientate myself. What is this about? So I needed to read about him, to get to know his biography, his ideology, his political activities, etc., in order to understand the objects in the room later. So, as he said, there are dead objects and there are alive objects. So, the missing link is this story that one knows about the artist or doesn't know about the artist. So, it's super interesting to me that he's modernist, but at the same time he's anti-modernist, because as a shaman, these works, like, more or less, I couldn't escape thinking of them like reliquariums. Like, we have to know the biography of the science in order to appreciate and apprehend them. So, on the second part of the question, it's super difficult to answer such a.
But you can jump back anytime you want. Boryana, do you know any artists that are students of Beuys?
I think I know one personally.
Not personally, just in
general. Yes.
Can you mention some and why they would be interesting? I learned about Beuys because of his students.
Okay.
So I'm not particularly kind of first generation Beuys lover.
I'm just wondering, is this like a examination or something?
No, it's just we're just talking.
Okay. So I think the greatest artists of Beuys are the ones who are not artists, because according to his ideas about art, everyone should be an artist and should be able to be an artist and to become an artist and to create this social sculpture. So I would name among his most important students people who probably did not enter the art world, but they created art. I don't know their names.
But this is a great answer, because actually Anselm Kiefer, one of his students, and actually my first and number one favorite of his students, when he was still good artist, in the early 80s, but he said that it shouldn't be taken literally, Beuys' statement that everybody is an artist. It's not like a professional artist, a biennial material or exhibition, museum quality kind of material. No, he meant that in every person, in every human being, and not only human beings, but also in all sorts of beings, there is a creative potential that we can build on. So that's why
That's why my answer is like that.
I love it.
That's my answer.
We'll have to ask Stefka, who is a cultural studies expert, educated in Germany and working for the Goethe-Institut. And there is a very important question: why Germany is so fond of Beuys? Why is Beuys so important for Germany? From today's point of view, from not knowing too much about 60 years ago, 100 years ago.
Well, I think he's an important figure for world art, for European art, not only for German art. But yeah, you have a right that he has become some kind of a symbol, which I'm not pretty sure that we should be so happy about, because we're now celebrating 100 years of Beuys, and you are asking us all about his works and so on, but I'm constantly asking myself a question: are they really still relevant, and is this kind of social and political activism still the relevant form? Because there is this feeling of past that I cannot refer to, but of course historically he's a very important figure. But I'm questioning all the time what is the relevancy today, and isn't this some kind of a romanticization of his figure and his way of doing art and political activism?
Well, but he had a political agenda and green agenda, and no, I think that it is possible to think of more relevant is like the way to cure a trauma, but first you have to acknowledge the trauma as a trauma in order to cure it. Isn't it so? So, Dimitar Bojkov, a question. You are aware of the World War II? Bulgarian part in World War II? If you were Beuys today, how would you treat the trauma of the Jewish population that disappeared in northern Greece and Macedonia because of Bulgarian occupation? And
maybe I will make an installation with a railway tram.
In the museum in Skopje?
No,
there is such an installation?
No, not this kind of installation, but another kind with some photos of the victims, something like that. But only a part of this terrain.
Okay, but how would you go about acknowledging the trauma? How would you go about making public the feeling that there is a trauma, that there is something unspoken?
Yes, we're finding some stories from the other people from this time. If I could find some receipts, some stories, some histories about that.
Property?
Yes, property, if it's possible, but I think it would be difficult to find some properties.
Okay, so
with a work in the archive, I think it's the best way to show some pieces from the archive.
But in the archive you need a marker. An archive is always classified, and you don't like binaries, you don't like...
Yes, but it's possible to find an unclassified archive also.
It's not. It won't be an archive then.
It depends. So archive is a broader concept, not only archive in the libraries, but it's a broader concept. That
was in your. You have been dealing and working with Abi Warburg and that kind of thing. Was in your view Beuys a good shaman?
Oh yes, of course.
Why?
I like of course this idea of linking between the shamanism of Beuys and his political activism. So to link the shamanism with the political, I think it's his best ideas of Beuys. He's not only a shaman but also a political artist. But
his shamanism was based on fake news, in a way. So
every kind of shamanism is based on fake news somehow. So of some kind of imaginary. So the shamanism is a way to provoke the collective imaginary, and I think this is important.
No binaries. How do you provoke the cognitive imaginary?
How do we provoke?
How do you provoke the cognitive imaginary today? Avoiding shamanism, avoiding Beuys, avoiding Facebook, avoiding all of these tools, but trying to reach.
I don't know. I've never decided to make this.
Why? You're a teacher.
To provoke the cognitive imaginary.
Yeah, of your students.
Without all these things.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how it can be isolated. That's why I'm confused about what should my answer be, because I think about myself as a teacher. If we focus on teaching. As somebody who exists in a time and space with the technology which is now, I exist in the current day, and I operate with all the biggest, like the instrumentarium that is given to me by everything that exists around me. If I have to isolate from this and that, it is just, it is I can't imagine it. Now you provoke me. You have to provoke this. You have to provoke me to imagine this now. I can't imagine what you're asking me.
No, okay, so this is...
I can't
let's
imagine
try.
to provoke the cognitive imaginary without having all these kind of things around me. That's the thing. So now you do it.
Nice. I can't. I'm not.
That's
I'm
the
just.
thing.
I'm just a shaman. So can you imitate? Have you heard any music produced by Beuys? A song maybe? He's got a lot of political songs.
Actually, not. I just imagined his piano
Imagine
work.
a Beuys tune. And tell.
Maybe it's a silence, actually.
Okay.
No, I mean, because I don't believe in silence. I think even if you close or erase with the headphones everything what is surrounding us, you're still gonna hear your thoughts. So for him, I think thoughts are music and thoughts are sound, and he tried to provoke the people to think more. And I think this was his idea, and I think he felt that the world needed a change, the world of artistic world needed a change, and he tried to provoke the people to communicate more and to think more. And there I see the relevance with today, that I think we feel the same.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think Germany will win the European Cup in football?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Why not? If they are cured of their trauma, they should be
I'm
totally
sure,
victorious.
I'm sure nobody's cured of this trauma, if we're still talking about it. And I don't think anybody would mention Joseph Beuys if any trauma was actually cured. You know, because when a trauma is cured, be it within society or within an individual, then you forget about the trauma, and you don't spend years and generations talking about that glorious day when it was cured, because you just move on. That's how I see it. And so I don't think Europe or the world has moved on from has cured the trauma it bears from the war.
There was an exhibition of Balkan art 2003 in Kassel at the Fridericianum, when the director of the Kassel Museum was René Bloch. René Bloch is notorious for having promoted Joseph Beuys, for organizing the performance with the Coyote in New York. At that time there were a lot of exhibitions of contemporary art from the Balkans after the Yugoslav war, after the trauma with the Yugoslav war, in the German-speaking countries, of curators of the same roughly generation. So in all these three main exhibitions there were a lot of Bulgarian artists, but the most Bulgarian artists, for one reason or another, were in the René Bloch exhibition. And I remember walking after the opening of the exhibition, walking with some colleagues and friends, and we were noticing this, and we were asking ourselves a question: why are there so many Bulgarian artists? And all of a sudden it dawned on us that for one reason or another, in all our works there was no visible trauma. There is nothing. I mean, we were probably the only ones that were kind of, without any question, we were Balkan, number one, and we didn't seem to be able to define a trauma. And this bothers me. I mean, for me, the biggest question about Beuys is, what if there is no trauma? Like, we do not have the trauma of colonial history, where we're simply not part of it, because we were conquered people. And how is his work useful for communities of people who do not have, luckily, such a deep trauma? So I'm trying to look for a trauma, for some even to invent one. And I cannot, in the context of this conversation today, I cannot think of any other option but hate on Facebook. Just this is for me the most disturbing thing, and this is the disturbing thing because it's possible maybe to use Beuys for people say that he was very mild, soft spoken, apart from his performances, individual. No, I mean this is like from kind of close friends. But I would just thinking. I mean, is this possible to do something like this on Facebook, Krassi? to behave like the inventor persona, who would be pacifying hate, who would be like a kind of a.
That's a great idea for a next project. Sure. But I don't agree that we are in Bulgaria. We are a trauma-less society. I mean, we are full of traumas. I mean, the whole national myth of founding the state is founded on trauma of the revival from the Ottoman Empire, and we still have these groups and political parties, etc., who are grounded on these traumas. And every 3rd of March we remake all this symbolic battle, etc. So and so on and so on. Basically, the first half of 20th century in Bulgaria is a civil war, and then we have again a new regime that is traumatic to remember, and that's why we cannot still swallow the near past. So we are full of traumas. Maybe that's why they are still invisible in the most of the Bulgarian art, because it's still very hard to distance ourselves.
How do you treat the subject of migrants, political migrants? You're having a show tomorrow, and it's called Camp Life, and it deals with migrants in Greece. What's your feeling about this trauma? Bulgaria kicked out migrants, wouldn't allow almost none.
No.
Is that a trauma?
No, I try to abstain from making any concrete political judgments, and actually, what I'm trying to do is recreate a kind of very recent, very contemporary kind of disaster that's happening. A lot of people are going through extreme stress and difficulties and horror, actually. And as Krasi said, if we are not progressing through previous traumas, we are also not progressing towards some of the things that the Western world is moving towards quicker, like more inclusivity and acceptance, solidarity, sympathy, empathy, and all those stuff. And actually, it just aims to kind of say, hey, look, these are people, like, don't be so prejudiced, you know. That's kind of the whole thing.
I have an easy question for Boryana. What is the feminist critique of Beuys? From a feminist point of view, what is the strongest objection from today's point of view?
I guess there are different critiques that can be feminist, and but for me, I can speak only from my point of view or from my position. He is one of the high modernists who are also celebrated and put on a pedestal in a way that reduces the meaning of a lot of other artists and important statements, which actually goes against the idea of direct democracy. So that's my critique. That's my feminist critique.
Famous. He's guilty of being famous.
No, he's not guilty of being famous. It is not necessarily his guilt. It is the way how big male artists have been celebrated and put on a pedestal for years and years, and again, reducing other importances.
So if we are male artists but we're not put on a pedestal, we should be happy.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very good. Krasi, people say that early on in his life, Beuys, when he was in Hitlerjugend actually, he saved a book by Carl Linné from being burned. Carl Linné, this guy who dealt with the natural world and stratification, whatever classification. How do you feel about Beuys's attitude to animals, nature? Not apart from the political aspect, apart from the Green Party.
I can sense that he's having his revival now in these years when we have this. Ecological catastrophes. This kind of attitude becomes more and more important. His ideas, I can see them resonate in the thought of Bruno Latour, for example, in all these recent developments like the new witches, this new age kind of ways to set up again this parliament of things like Bruno Latour claims it. So, yeah.
Do you think we can bury a book by Caroline as if it's a Bible or a Holy Quran and hope that it will produce a plant? A plant of new kind of knowledge?
Yeah, that would be actually quite ethical thing, because with the stones, I was thinking a few minutes ago that we have these two objects, that the stone for Beuys represented a corpse, but it's kind of eternal. It stays there. It doesn't deteriorate so fast as the biological matter, as the oak grows and changes and stays never the same. So there is this paradoxical opposition there. So with the book and the tree, that would be much more reciprocal.
Thank you. Miryana, this is the last. If somebody feels she or he needs to say something, now is the time to say, because I'm going to give the mic to Miryana and
Let it go.
no, and offer you the chance to organize a small kind of a action, performance, finissage on
For Beuys.
Beuys.
For us.
Honoring Beuys for us.
For everyone.
Yeah. You can strip him off his pedestal. You can put an empty pedestal in. How would you go about it?
I think so many options. Heart pounding. What comes to mind? Close your eyes. Perhaps you think of people. Perhaps you think of representation. Perhaps you think of how we exchange information. So many things, but trauma's too heavy. Silence is too empty. Feminism needs to be tackled, but it's hard. He brings so many issues. So let us just begin the song that we'll compose, that will just think in our minds.
Come over, everybody. Pick a note.
Can I start?
Yeah. Pick a key, everybody.
Let's start.
And we do it together.
Let's
we
start.
Produce
We all have to do this.
A chord, like come, with one finger, everybody, and you have to press. When I say press, you press one thing. Boryana, don't hide there.
Press.
Press.
Who are we? What are we saying? Say something. Say the first thing that comes to your mind. No. Stevka.
No.
What does it mean? Krasi, what do you think of? The first thing that comes to your mind. Krasi, what are you seeing?
You.
Krasi, the glasses. What are you seeing? What's in front of you? Say it. Krasi's thinking. We're not here.
What? Smiling?
Smile.
Yes.
What's there to smile for?
Yes, I'm smiling.
Okay.
What? I don't know why. This is just instinct.
So silence ends smiling, thinking, reducing, Opening up. You're nodding. You're agreeing. Offer us the beginning of a song.
A beginning of a song. Et si tu n'existais pas?
Why this? Dis-moi, dis-moi. Let it go.
The song. Dis-moi pour qui j'existerais. But I'm singing very bad.
Okay.
And you?
Thank you all. The question, smile and what's there to smile for, refers to an old movie, I believe, by, what was his name? Anderson, but the actor was the very young Malcolm McDowell. And I think the movie is If, or something like that. Smile, black, black, black. What's there to smile for? Thank you. Over. We have enough?
We're sarcastic.